All right, we are about to take a super fast tour of the cell. The basic building block of, well, you. And look, my promise is simple. By the time we're done here, you are going to have a crystal clear mental map of how it all fits together. Something that'll actually stick when you're staring at your next exam.
But first, let me ask you something. What if I told you that more than 95% of the energy you're using right now, just to watch this, comes from one single tiny little structure inside your cells? Yeah, you heard that right. Just one organelle is doing pretty much all the heavy lifting. You know, when you're deep in your physiology textbook, it's so easy to get lost in all the tiny details, right? You completely miss the big picture of how the cell actually works as a whole system. Well, today, we are going to fix that. So here's the game plan. We're going to treat the cell like a tiny city. We'll start with the city walls, the cell membrane. Then we'll hit the production line, the ER and Golgi. After that, it's the power plant, the mitochondria. And we'll finish up with the cleanup crew, the lysosomes and peroxisomes. Let's get to it.
All right, part one, the city walls, or the cell membrane. This is the barrier that separates everything organized inside the cell from all the chaos happening outside.
So the foundation of this wall is something called a lipid bilayer. The easiest way to think about it is like a microscopic film of oil. Now, because the inside of it is fatty, it's hydrophobic, which just means it hates water. And because of that, it creates this perfect natural barrier that stops most water-soluble stuff, things like ions or glucose, from just wandering in and out. This selective barrier is absolutely critical for keeping things stable inside the cell.
But hold on, the membrane isn't just a sheet of fat. There are other key players here. You've got the phospholipids, which form that basic two-layer structure. Then you have cholesterol, which kind of wedges itself in there to make sure the membrane isn't too runny or too stiff. It's got to be just right. And then the really important parts, the proteins. Integral proteins are like the tunnels and gateways that let specific things pass through. And peripheral proteins, they often hang out on the surface and act as enzymes, kicking off chemical reactions. So here's the big takeaway for the membrane. It is not a brick wall. Think of it more like a really smart, very selective bouncer at a club. It's actively deciding who gets in and who gets out. Okay, we've made it past the bouncer and we're inside the city. What do we see? This huge industrial complex, the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus. This is basically the cell's factory and shipping department all rolled into one. So, the ER is the factory floor, and it's split into two sections. First, you have the rough ER. It's called rough because it's covered in these little dots called ribosomes, and those are the machines that actually build proteins. Then, you've got the smooth ER. No ribosomes here. Its job is totally different. It makes lipids, like cholesterol, and it also helps detoxify nasty stuff. Okay, so let's walk through the whole assembly line. It's pretty straightforward. Step 1. The ER makes the proteins and lipids. Step 2, these new products get packed into little transport bubbles called vesicles. Think of them like tiny cargo trucks. Step 3, these trucks drive over to the Golgi apparatus, which is like the city's main post office. Here, the products get modified, sorted, and packaged. And finally, step 4, they're sent out in brand new vesicles to wherever they need to go.
All right, every city needs power, right? Time to visit the part that keeps the lights on and the factories humming, the power plant, also known as the mitochondria.
Yep, you knew it was coming, the powerhouse of the cell. Look, I know it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a very, very good reason. It is 100% true. Without these guys, pretty much everything in the cell would just stop. So how do they actually generate power? They do it by making a molecule called ATP. The absolute best way to think of ATP is as the cell's cache. The cell can't just eat a sugar molecule for energy. No, it has to convert the energy from that sugar into ATP first. Then it can spend that ATP cache on everything it needs to do, powering pumps, building stuff, moving muscles, you name it. And this brings us right back to that crazy stat from the beginning. Just look at this. Over 95% of all the ATP, all the energy cache in the cell, is made by the mitochondria. The rest of the cell barely makes any. That's why they are so unbelievably important. Okay, last stop on our tour. Any city that's this busy is going to produce some trash and have to deal with some dangerous materials. And that's where the cell's specialized cleanup crew comes in, the lysosomes and the peroxisomes. Now listen up because this is a super common spot for students to get mixed up on exams. You have to know the difference. Let's make it easy. Lysosomes are the recycling centers. They're basically little bags of powerful digestive enzymes that just chew up and break down old, broken cell parts or maybe some bacteria the cell ate. Peroxisomes, on the other hand, are the hazmat team. They handle the really dangerous stuff. They use special enzymes to neutralize poisons, think alcohol in your liver, and they also help break down fats. So, how in the world do you keep those two straight when you're stressed out during an exam? Don't worry, I've got a super simple trick for you.
Just burn this into your brain. Lysosomes, lyse. Lyse is just a fancy word for break apart. So lysosomes break things apart, and peroxisomes handle poison and peroxide. Simple, right? Let's say it again. Lysosomes, lyse. Peroxisomes handle poison. You're not going to forget that now.
All right, let's wrap this all up. Let's do a super fast recap of our entire city tour. You ready? Let's go.
The membrane, it's the selective bouncer at the gate. The ER and Golgi, that's your factory and your post office. The mitochondria, the power plant, making more than 95% of the energy. And finally, the lysosomes and peroxisomes are the city's cleanup and hazmat crew. And that, my friends, is the city in a nutshell.
So, you might be thinking, why does getting these tiny details right even matter? Well, think about this for a second. A tiny defect in just one small part of the cell can lead to horrible diseases like polycystic kidney disease. It just goes to show you that every single piece of this tiny city has to work perfectly for you to be healthy. Hey, if this finally made the cell click for you, do me a favor and take just 1 second to subscribe. It really helps.